Okay.
I don't really know, apparently you can do things in terms of, I'm completely bullshitting here, I have no idea.
Let's just stop there. Cut.
Hey, I'm Matt, and welcome to the 2021 Pinkbike Summer Field Test here at beautiful Sun Peaks. Okay, so I've got with me the power wagon of e-bikes, the 2022 Norco Range VLT. It's got a 180mm fork with a 170mm rear end paired with a 900 watt-hour battery. I mean, why not have all the power and travel if you have a big e-bike? Rolling on 29-inch wheels, you'll also find the new Shimano EP8 motor that replaces the previous gen E8000. You now have the option of 3 battery sizes when you purchase the bike: 540 watt-hour, 720, or 900. Now the battery is removable without having to pull the motor out, and there are 2 water bottle mounts on the down tube. With the redesign of the Range VLT, the head angle now sits at 63 degrees, and the seat tube is a nice steep 76.9 degrees. The sizing on these bikes is pretty standard. Our large sits at a 475mm reach with a 641mm stack to give you that really in the bike feel. Which brings me to the next point, the stability of this bike. The alloy chainstays are a whopping 462mm across all sizes. I thought we might see size-specific chainstays given Norco's ride-align philosophy. One thing that does change with the sizing though is the seat angle gets steeper as you go up in size, so tall people rejoice. Okay, so let's get into some suspension talk here. Up front, you've got a whopping 180mm Fox 38 Grip 2 paired with a DHX2 coil. That gives you 170 mils of rear travel. That's it, let's move on to the ride impressions.
Okay, it's time we talk about how the biggest, most powerful, heaviest e-bike does on the climbs. Matt, what is the story when it comes time to start pedaling this thing up the mountain?
You know what? This thing is actually pretty good at climbing despite the 56-pound weight with that huge 900 watt-hour battery. It has a really steep seat tube angle, and it has a really comfortable saddle which lets you stay seated over all the roots and rocks. So you just keep those pedals spinning and it's going to deliver the power.
I want to ask you about the long rear end, 462mm stays. In my mind, those are way too long for a bike to feel comfortable when it gets tight and stuff, but I think the story might be a little different with this Norco e-bike.
Yeah, the coil shock really helps it stay planted. It's pretty well balanced despite having those long chainstays. I didn't really have to move around to find traction on it, and it actually got up some of the steeper climbs right away, like first go.
Really?
Yeah, it
just
was
tractored
impressive.
right up it.
Yeah.
Yeah. This thing came with that 900 watt-hour battery. You guys know I had to do the battery testing. I was not looking forward to this. 7,684 feet in only 2 hours and 26 minutes. Like if I'm on a regular bike, that's like a solid 5-6 hour day minimum. Under 2.5 hours. Wild.
Yeah. That's the biggest battery that I've seen almost in conjunction with anything else out there. And you do have 3 options like we talked about before with the 540 and then the 720 as well. So those will cut down on the overall weight of the bike.
Okay, we've got a ton of climbing behind us. Finally, it's time to do some descending. Let's start with the suspension first. Matt, I heard you call this thing a monster truck many times. Talk to me about suspension.
Yeah, well, it's got the biggest fork on test, a 180mm Travel Fox 38, and then it's got a DHX2 coil out back. This thing is heavy, we know that, but it stays on the ground and it's just filled with traction. It's so good. Seated while climbing or descending, this thing is glued to the ground in a good way.
What about, could it be too glued to the ground? I mean, it's a heavy bike, very active suspension and a lot of it. Were there moments where you're like, oh, I wish it was a little firmer here or there, a little less deep feeling or anything like that?
Yeah, over little roots and rocks, it definitely stayed on the ground, tracked really well. And in the bigger hits with that coil shock, it could have used a little bit more ramp up. Yeah, it did bottom out a little bit hard.
Okay. Henry, Let's talk about handling on this big bad boy. What's the story?
It's a bike that I think utilizes progressive geometry in a good way. It's got a 63-degree head angle paired to a 77-degree seat tube angle. And it's also, let's face it, the elephant in the room is it's got a
I was going to say, it's got a bit of a rear end behind
It's got a 463 mil rear end.
462 millimeters.
I wouldn't want to, that millimeter makes a big lot of difference. But what that means is that for me, with a 475 reach, it wasn't the end of the world. It felt planted, it felt stable. And with all that weight, that definitely wasn't a bad thing. But I just feel kind of a bit concerned for that, 5'4" rider maybe, 5'5" that goes for a small size, and it's the same rear end.
Yeah. Let's talk about those corners. Slow speed corner, you're going 2 miles an hour, you're almost ready to fall over. Is that bike difficult to get around tight corners?
I think it definitely, as we've alluded to, the fact that it does have so much grip definitely helps. Listen, it is a big bike with a big rear centre, but compared to something like the Commencal, which is slightly shorter, it's on par with that. I think if you went to something like the Yeti, which does feel a bit more sprightly, even for an e-bike, or maybe the lighter Specialized, you might have something that's a bit more, a word we've used a lot, a higher level of nimbility.
We're going to make it a word.
Yeah, but you will get through stuff, but hey, it's a trade-off. If you want that super planted feel on fast terrain where it just hugs the ground, everything's a compromise.
Right. So, Matt, do you want that compromise? Is this the e-bike of the bunch that you would pick for riding?
I think for full-powered e-bikes, it definitely would be. I really liked the in-the-bike feel, that slack head angle, the big tall 180 fork, and even the long rear center felt okay to manage for me. It just plowed through everything. It kept me nice and straight through all the chunder bits. And the only downside was maybe some of the tighter turns. It was a lot of weight to get to flip to one side or the next for the next corner.
Let's talk about time testing as well. Where did the Norco pan out?
So it was the slowest of the bunch. They didn't have a huge differential, but yeah, I think this was a 2:59.
All right. But despite it being the slowest bike of our test track, that's the one you'd pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to race e-bikes, so I'm just
10 years.
It's the retirement plan. After enduro comes racing e-bikes.
Right, exactly.
And then cyclocross when you're like 60.
Yeah. Matt, tell us what you liked.
Okay, so there were a couple smaller features that really made a difference on this bike. And one of them was the Ergon e-bike specific seat. It was a lot different than all the others. It's not
weird
like,
looking.
It's not like anything else I've
Got this
tried.
thing going up on the back to push against, right?
Yeah, and it's a little bit wider. It's a little bit softer, and it just really helped me stay seated and then spin through everything. All the terrain I wanted, boom, the bike was on the ground, the power was consistent. And that was also due to the 165 mil cranks, which I really liked.
Why is that? Can you explain that for a sec?
Well, it just gets you a lot more ground clearance, and you want to keep the cadence going so that the motor is always engaged, and then you're getting that consistent traction.
Right, that makes sense. Another thing that you mentioned are those DT Swiss E1700 wheels. You smashed into a bunch of things, and?
Yeah, I mean, we're here at Sun Peaks. There's a lot of rock. You're going really fast. We're on a big, heavy bike. It's not easy to pick that thing up and get out of the way of those obstacles sometimes. And these things were just bulletproof. They're on a couple of the bikes, and they did us no wrong.
All right. One last thing, that one-up post moves nice and smooth for the entire time of the test. No issues there. That brings us to our cons. Mr. Negative here, Henry.
It's a personal thing, but the XT shifting didn't perhaps feel as somewhat, some could say, as kind of positive or snappy as some of the SRAM stuff.
That brings us to models and pricing. So we have the VLT C1. It's $8,400 without our 900 watt hour battery that costs another $1,000. So as it sits, this bike is $9,500 American. There's also the C2, that's $6,500, and that gets you a Zeb Select Plus, Super Deluxe, GX drivetrain, and Code R brakes. That one sounds real interesting to me, and again, that's without the battery, so you need to add in either $749 for the 540 watt hour battery, $1,000 for the 720 watt hour battery,
For the 900?
$1,199.
Nailed it.
All right. The C2 is the most interesting to me because it still has the good suspension, but it's almost $2,000 less expensive than the C1.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to ask your opinion about the aluminum versions of the bike. Would you consider those? Because they're a fair chunk cheaper.
Yeah, I bet they're a fair bit heavier too. I mean, we had the carbon one, which was still, kind of dependent on the weight with the size of the battery that you choose. But I might try and go for something lighter if I had the cash.
Yeah. Henry?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at that common cell, and we talk about what good value it represented for $7,000, although they do have models starting a bit cheaper. For under $5,500, you can get an e-bike.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's probably a far less, that's probably quite a good entry level into the e-bike world, because some of these bikes are getting bloody expensive.
Very
Shish
much
kebab.
so.
Yeah, too much.
Yeah. All right, we're getting near the end of this review, and that means pros and cons. Matt, tell me what you liked about this bike.
I mentioned it before, but this thing is just a power wagon. Lots of energy, big motor, big battery, lots of travel. This thing just trucks. So you can kind of take it through any terrain you want. And if you have all that power, you might as well have all that travel and just go
Right? Hit all the things.
fast.
There you go. Henry?
I totally agree. The thing I liked about the Norco is it just seemed rather unpretentious. Everything was where I wanted it to be. It's got lots of different battery sizes to sort lots of different people, and to ride, it felt like it didn't have any of the obvious drawbacks. As something like, the Yeti is an amazing bike, but it's not a plow. And I think some people, they get an e-bike and they want to plow. The common cell with the long seat tube, it becomes immediately apparent. I swung a leg over the Norco and I was just like, actually, this is a really easy place to be.
Ready to go, right?
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people that, there are some really experienced riders getting into e-biking, which is great. And I think there's also e-biking is proving a gateway into mountain biking for a lot of people. This is a really easy bike to ride. And I don't think that's by accident. I think Norco have made something that's quite unintimidating to a lot of people, that just grips, that's planted,
Right.
it's a lot of fun.
Okay, Mr. Positive.
Yeah.
Give me some cons, though.
Some cons. It is heavy. It's a big bike. And that isn't gonna suit
Asterix.
some people.
Asterix.
Yeah.
You have those battery options, though.
Yeah, and totally, like I said, I think in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have an e-bike, it's going to have a whopping great big fork, it's going to have a core shock, and it's going to, could be an anchor for all I care.
Yep.
It doesn't really bother me. I'm not saying that suits everybody at all, but I just think,
It sounds like
Yeah.
it's not a con for you.
no, it's not really, but it would be to some people.
One last con, Henry.
For the smaller riders, its chainstays will basically overshadow the Reach.
I mean, we don't have a small size here to test, though.
No.
But we're just assuming that long rear end with that shorter front end probably isn't going to make for a good combo. Hey guys, I'm going to go on a limb right here. I bet this Norco VLT is best suited to somebody who just wants to go through all the things. Rocks, trees, roots, buildings, fences, other mountain bikers, whatever. Am I right?
Yeah, there's tons of grip. It's a really good planted bike. The size large was, fit me well. I felt really comfortable in the bike kind of feeling. And like we talked about before, depending on how long you're gonna ride for, you have the option to choose that big or small battery. So you don't need to carry around all the weight if you're never gonna do more than 9,000 feet of climbing.
I'm so tired.
And here's an option. I mean, we've spoken about it, like you could only exclusively buy one battery. If you're pretty flush with cash, you could buy the super heavy one and the light one and get something very versatile.
True, that's a good point. Okay, so let's wrap this up with where the bike belongs.
I think it's definitely going to suit something where the average speed is higher, but I think it also has got enough grip that you could ride some steep, gnarly trails and do it, really, really well.
So is it fair to say that the VLT is best suited to some pretty serious terrain?
I think so. I would say it's probably the most. I would say it's the most aggressive bike on test in terms of all-round capabilities.
All right, that is it for the Range VLT C1 review here for the 2021 Summer Field Test in Sun Peaks. We've got a whole bunch more videos coming, including the Huck to Flat that I know you're all waiting for. Jason is just cringing off camera over there. It's gonna be great. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that or any other videos.